morning. This is Humanity Meets Business, Business Therapy with Christine Salvo. I am so happy to welcome our special guest today, Jonathan Pritchard. Jonathan Pritchard is a highly sought after consultant and speaker, specializing in the area of amplified psychology in life and business. His client list includes Fortune 500 companies like BP, State Farm, United Airlines, and more. He is the founder of the international consulting company, the Hellstrom Group, which has trained teams to improve their sales, negotiation, and presentation skills on 6 of the 7 continents. His expertise comes from his background traveling the world as a mentalist, a unique type of entertainer specializing in mind reading tricks. The applied psychology he uses on stage in Vegas, on TV, and online gives him an edge off stage as well. He is the author of several books focused on psychology, motivation, self-improvement, and more. Join his membership group at Elite.University. He currently lives in Asheville, where you can find him practicing Wing Chun Kung Fu every morning. Oh, what a fun introduction. That was really great to read. Welcome, 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 Jonathan. So happy to have you.
That was fantastic. And with an intro like that, I better be great.
So, okay, this is so off topic, but I have no idea. I have not heard of this morning practice you have. Can you just give me like a 1 minute? What is this?
Yes, it is a type of martial art. It's a flavor of Kung Fu called Wing Chun, and it's a very simple, direct kind of practice that covers all the basics. And the discipline of learning the system is the discipline of learning how to control your body, then your mind, emotions, and energy in your most abstract kind of way of putting it. So it's just a practice of boundaries, movement, connection, self-reflection, basically everything you need to get the day off right.
I love it. So he's like, here's this like extensive resume and you want to find out my morning routine. But as we know, morning routines matter. They really do. So
really do. Yep.
To have a resume like you have, to have an introduction like that, you have to have some things in place, some things in order. So right. I'm super curious because we kind of talked pre-show for a minute or two about the power of your imagination. And that's really kind of what we're going to focus our topic on today. But, you know, you're this mentalist, you have this extensive, all these experiences and all these things that you do. So I always got to start with the story. So before we get to the imagination, which I'm sure we're going to work in, who are you? Where'd you come from? What was your interest in mentalism and book writing and psychology and motivation? And what's driving this machine that you are?
I'm endlessly fascinated and curious about being alive. And as far as I can tell, I've got this one ride to enjoy it, and I better get as much out of this opportunity as I can. So there's never a dull moment. I don't think I've ever been bored. There's just always something to think about or create. So that's kind of long story short, but I grew up in the mountains of North Carolina near Asheville. Then I went off to college where I then kind of toured the world for 10, 20 years or so, and recently moved back to Asheville. So I've kind of come full circle. The interest in mentalism started early on when I was 5 or 6. My dad got me a magic kit for Christmas. He thought it was a throwaway gift and that he'd find it in the trash in a couple of days. But a year later, I'm still doing it. And he goes, all right, I guess this is what he does now. And I never gave it up. And over the years, I realized that the mind reading tricks were more interesting to people than a coin trick or a rope trick because, well, spoiler alert, I'm telling them about them. I'm not telling them anything new. I'm not telling them anything that they don't already know. But the fact that I can prove to them that I've heard them, that I understand who they are and what they're about is a really unusually powerful experience. And it genuinely brings people to tears because not many people get to have that obvious of an experience where another person sees you for who you are. And that ability, man, that's the trick, right? Of building connection and relationships, whether you're talking about business and sales and marketing or personal life, family, friends, romance, whatever, it all has to do with humans and seeing each other. And not many people are good at doing that, which is why I'm who I am.
Wow. I can also see how that can be kind of this, that infinite give and take. So as you're giving people this gift of mind reading, you're also taking from them that experience of, I always like to say it feels good to give. So when you get to give someone the experience of getting seen, right, of feeling seen, of feeling heard, you also get the get. You're getting something out of that too. So this could be one of those, I could see why it'd be kind of something you'd continue to pursue, because it's one of those win-win scenarios, right? We're all feeling good from this.
For sure. And that you just laser focused on pretty much the most powerful part of it, because there's another way to do mentalism, to do magic tricks, and that's to be the rock star. Look what I can do that you can't. I've studied a lifetime to be able to do these things that are impossible. Ha ha ha. That is entertaining to a certain extent, but it's not edifying in the same way as thinking of yourself as a facilitator to help create these moments of connection and amazement. So making the participants, the people who are brave enough to work with me, make them the star of the show. Look what you can do that you had no clue you could actually pull off. 3 minutes ago, you told me for sure that was impossible, and now you just did it because I showed you how. That's a lot cooler than, well, I'm special. I was born with the gift. Nobody could ever be me. That's not interesting, man. But you weren't born as me. I don't care. So
well, it's so funny you say that, because it's almost counterculture, right? Because so much of our lives we're given kind of this recipe for success, which is be special, stand out, do these things. And as you said, there's points in our lives where I think a lot of us kind of get to the top of whatever we were climbing, and we go, oh, I thought there'd be more. I thought it'd be better. And in fact, that philosophy that you just mentioned can actually be very isolating. I always like to say, who cares if you have the most expensive pair of shoes if there's no one else to compliment them?
Exactly.
Like that's kind of what gives things value. So focusing on the experience that you're giving to others, that's sounding like that's been a big aspect of your success, not just in the kind of commercial or capital world, but in the heart world and in the I'm fulfilled kind of world.
Right. And it is that process, regardless of what dimension you're looking at it from. Because in the corporate world, my clients are bringing me in for a very specific reason. And it could be any number of reasons: employee appreciation, the awards banquet, they want me to be the MC, or the after dinner entertainment at a trade show, they want me to help them get leads, like whatever it is. I need to know what the end result is that they want, then work backwards from there. In the show, I want to know, what do I want my audience leaving, thinking, feeling, or remembering about our time together? Now, how do I make that happen? Then work my way backwards from that. So you're right. It's all determined by what's the end result that you want to create in the world with other people. Then now you've got your path. Go walk it.
Ooh, so this kind of wisdom, you can't just kind of get. So a lot of these insights and experiences, I'm guessing you've had kind of your own journey here. And I do want to hear about your own journey of your imagination, and then kind of making that real for our listeners.
I guess the shortest way is to zoom in on my college years, because I had grown up doing magic tricks and kind of specializing in the mentalism side of the mystery arts. And then when I went to college, my mentor, James Randi, came to do a lecture. And I skipped classes and absolutely hounded the person who was bringing him in. And I was like, I'm a magician. James Randi, he's a huge name in the magic world. I have to meet this guy. So I got clearance to be his escort from the on-campus hotel to the luncheon. So I had 10 minutes to walk him across campus, basically. And we hit it off, spent 2 days hanging out before he went on to the next engagement. And in those 2 days, I just asked him for a job. At the time, he was running a foundation to help people understand critical thinking skills and how and why you're so easy to fool and why you believe weird things. Really fascinating stuff to me. So I started working with him over the summers, and that was kind of my master's course in mentalism, performing, showbiz, how to think about character development, how to love your audience, why you should. So learning from him was just a spectacularly valuable time in my life, and wound up working with him for 13 years, helping manage a science conference. So I was kind of behind the scenes helping the science conference run. And that's how I got to meet a lot of big names and really interesting people. So that's kind of how I got my start. But it was all seeing him do his lecture, meeting him, then talking with him and having him share stories of his adventures and what's possible. And he just blew my mind wide open of what you could accomplish as an entertainer. So it was that mentor-mentee dynamic that really gave me a much bigger picture of what life could be beyond. Like I literally grew up in a trailer on a dirt road in the mountains. Like our water came from a mountain spring that came out of the hill right over there. There was a hose in the stream that went to a big concrete reservoir. Then a pipe came from that down to the trailer, and that was our water.
Mm-hmm. So kind of telling a little bit of this story, it's like maybe from that kind of those humble beginnings, maybe your imagination was very wild, maybe it was medium, maybe it was low. I mean, I think that's a very personal thing, right? No matter where we come from, what we imagine that we can have is shaped by our environments, our people, our teachers, our leaders, and as you say, just our imagination. So you had this mentor come in, and I'm thinking like, I want to take this class. I really want to take this class. Like, I want to know all the tricks of magic. That's really exciting, interesting, stimulating stuff. But it also sounds to me like you worked for it. You know, it wasn't you, the opportunity was there, but if you didn't want it, if you didn't work from it, it still would have slipped. And maybe another one would have come later, but giving yourself that credit as well. And this is for our listeners too, that when you seize the opportunity, give yourself a high five for that. Because, you know, hopefully we'll get to return that favor if we've been mentors or we've had mentors sometime in our own, you know, in our storyline, we'll get to help someone else. But exactly. We also have to celebrate the fact that the opportunity was there and you fought for it, you looked for it, and then you took it and you worked for it. That's what I'm hearing from that story.
I would agree that I had an overabundance of gumption. The sheer audacity to ask for opportunity has been my superpower. The recognizing what's possible kind of grew over time, but it wasn't like I was a kid and I want to be world famous and travel the world. That wasn't even on my radar. I was just fascinated by shuffling cards. Like that was it, man. And I could just do that for hours and be happy. And I still do. Like that's a pastime of mine. So it's more about recognizing the opportunity that's in front of me and having the imagination to see that this could be a thing. It doesn't have to be all that grand to wind up being something beyond what you possibly could have dreamt of even 6 months ago.
Right. So doing the consulting work that you do and being in front of businesses and doing trainings and doing public speaking, a lot of adults, unfortunately, and I'm not generalizing or stereotyping, but it's kind of well known. Our imaginations are very active and vivid when we're kids. I remember sitting at a table at a restaurant and playing with a fork and knife, playing with sugar packets. And, in my mind, there's this big story happening. And, to everyone around, it's like, oh, at least they're over there being quiet. Right. But as we age and we get more responsibilities and life seems a little bit more real and realistic and, kind of these messages we get, sometimes tapping into the imagination is a little bit harder as we go. I don't know if you've experienced that.
I'd say so. And to me, it's an even deeper thing because your values and what you value in the world dictates what your mind lets through from your experiences. So you wind up in a weird kind of self-reinforcing process where you're only looking for something. So you only find that something and you ignore anything that could prove it otherwise. We like to think that our minds are these information sponges and we're just soaking up and absorbing the world. Really, if we noticed every single thing that we could possibly be aware of every second, you would be overwhelmed. Our non-conscious mind, its primary job is to filter out irrelevant information so that we've got the bandwidth to notice the important stuff. And what you see as important, that's what your values are. So you're right that your imagination kind of loses its spark. A lot of that is because through your life, you've been reinforced to value non-imagination, to conform, to fit in, to do the thing that authority tells you to do. And keeping that little spark of imagination and creativity alive through the standard social path is no small feat. And I'm firmly convinced that it's still there. You still got it. It's not like you lose it. But it's not something that's automatic. It's not going to be something that flourishes without attention, time, skill, and effort. So
yeah,
it's there for you waiting.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm a therapist. I spend all my day talking to people about therapy stuff. And one of the things that I notice is actually the imagination is completely poorly managed because people are imagining all day, but usually about bad stuff.
Exactly. What if this? What if that? What if
I'm
this
always
might
laughing,
happen?
going like, well, if you're gonna use your imagination, we might want to think of something cool. Like, geez. But truly, that's kind of how that, because like as we age, we are adults, and like you said, our filters come in and our values come in. Now it's like we're navigating the world as like there's landmines everywhere. Well, what if this happens? Well, what if that happens? Well, what if? And then we're having these emotional reactions to these thoughts, and then if you do that long enough, you end up hanging out with me because it's now a clinical problem. It's a real issue. So for our listeners, being, this man, a mentalist, and with all this magic history, which I think is brilliant, I just think is so cool. Somebody that hasn't lost touch with their imagination. Are there tricks or tips of reconnecting to that? Like just things that we can do to start getting those like juices flowing again and kind of having where we could have so much fun with a fork and knife, or even just imagining a future that we want instead of a future that we don't?
Absolutely. And it might sound too simple, too obvious. However, I would highly recommend everybody learn a simple magic trick. That's it. Very, very simple, easy. Check out a beginner's magic book at your library. Go to that place where they have real books, physical things, ink on paper. They still make those. Go there, go to the magic section, pick up a beginner's magic book and learn anything. And that process of learning to entertain and delight your friends and family is a lot more difficult than you might think it is. And it's worth it because you wind up realizing that you're putting all this energy into creating an experience for people you like. And the more you focus on what you can create for others, it frees you up from worrying about what they're thinking about you or judging you or whatever that tape is running in your head. It's just such a fun thing. And that spark goes, oh, that's what having fun is like. Okay, that's really cool. What else could I do? And then you might discover a little piece of curiosity that you didn't know you had.
You know what? It's so funny because just like we said, just like you had just said, how the mind filters unimportant and important stuff. You're like, this may seem obvious, but everyone should learn a magic trick. And I went, I would have never thought of that. I would have never in a million years thought like, you know what you should do? I'm going to do it. I'm definitely going to do it. I'm so curious about this and I want to know. So I think we're kind of ready to talk about the power. Like why we're talking about stimulating the imagination and all this kind of good stuff and learning a magic trick and getting reconnected to fun and play. And I really do think this is a brilliant idea. Anywhere you go, you can use this, you can engage people. I love it as just even an icebreaker, a connecting tool. And in fact, for my kids that I work with, my high schoolers and younger with social anxiety, I'm actually going to offer this as an intervention now, because I think this is an amazing icebreaker, amazing way to kind of get past the me and focus on the thing. And when you focus on the thing, you're automatically bringing the people to you. But what would you say with all of this training, all this knowledge, expertise, what is the power of the imagination? So why do we want to stimulate it anyway?
Because it is the source of every single thing and human experience you've ever had, and for every single human being that's ever been alive. Every single object and thing that's ever been created by a person first had to be thought of. All of it had to first be held in someone's mind to imagine a reality that doesn't exist yet. Every single advance is the result of imagination, not logic. Logic and reason is what you use as a tool to fashion your imagination into reality, but imagination guides it. So every technological advancement, every single tool you've ever used, every single movie you've ever watched, every single story you've read, book, everything first started in somebody's mind. So if you enjoy anything, you've enjoyed the creation of somebody's imagination.
Wow, that's really powerful. Yeah, I see it. I mean, what we're doing right now, somebody had to imagine that this was going to be possible.
Exactly. So if you can't imagine something, then you have zero chance of making it happen.
So it all starts in imagination. And if you want it, you have to be able to imagine it. Now, is the imagination kind of like limitless? Like, how would you suggest? So if someone's like, I've never imagined really anything other than winning the lottery, which I think is probably the number one, you know, you can ask anybody, what would you do if you win the lottery? And people usually have answers. What would you, how would you start this process of, okay, I really want to start this business? Like, do you have a process that you think of?
I do, because knowing what you want is the first start. And I used to think that was too obvious, kind of like learn a magic trick. It just seems obvious to me. It's like if you want to achieve something, you first have to know what you're aiming for. If you're not aiming, you're not going to hit anything. So many people are used to aiming for nothing, that they're happy no matter where their arrow lands. So it's kind of accepting the power that you can aim, that you can focus on this and ignore all of that. That is the first step in freeing up yourself to imagine what that deep down quiet voice has been saying since forever, that you try real hard to ignore because everybody in your life is telling you what you should be doing, and you've been rewarded for doing what they say you should be doing. It's your life, though. Every single action you take, you're the one that's at its consequences. They're not. They don't get to live through the consequences of your choices. So why are you valuing their input over yours? And that is a form of imagination too. So part of it is understanding the power of your imagination, the requirement of being able to shape it, to picture what it is you would like to exist that doesn't, and then having the sheer audacity to actually start working for it and to make it happen. Nobody else can see what's in your imagination. Nobody else can believe in something only you think of. So other people can only experience what you build and create and bring into reality.
That's pretty sweet. And actually, I like your simple format. I don't think things, once they get too complicated, it seems like they get a little blurry. So to me, the simpler, the easier, the better.
Well, because, I have a 7-step process.
I have a 47-step process and a 300-page book. And if you get to the end of it, you'll figure it out. But
right.
So I'm actually gonna work on this myself. And like I said, I'm gonna use that. I'm gonna learn a magic trick, and maybe I'll just start teaching one, because I really, that hasn't been brought to my attention before. And anything that hasn't been brought to my attention before, I'm usually very appreciative of, like, cool, thanks for making my world bigger and bringing this into my view. And now I can go and serve others with your ideas here. I'll give you credit.
Well, thank you. And hidden beneath the surface is a master's class in learning how to be a better communicator. Because at first it won't fool anybody, and then you'll get it to work and it will come across as an interesting puzzle. And then it'll be a really interesting puzzle. Then it'll be something that, wait a minute, wait, what? And it will be puzzling. And then after you've been at it for a while, you can create magic with it. And people just have no idea how in the world you did what you did. But it's just, you're doing the same things, just better.
Yeah, that's good to mention too. Magicians really practice their craft. You're probably not going to end up at step 10 right away, but if you stick with it, you will get those really fun results.
I have literally worked for a year to learn and figure out that, this probably shouldn't go in the show or any talks, and then put it away. Like that's the level of weird that I'm working with.
I love it. So that hyper focus. So Jonathan, you have been nothing but an amazing guest. And thank you for sharing all of this really fun stuff with us. If our listeners want to find you, to find out more, get a hold of you, where would they go and what would they do?
The best place is Elite.University that you mentioned at the top of the show, that has links to all my social media. I'm most often on Twitter. So if you'd like to know what being trapped in my head for a 14-hour car ride is like, then go to Twitter. And Elite.University is where you can find my material, book, courses, all that kind of fun stuff. Or $1,000,000mindreader.com. That I own that too. I own so many URLs, it's ridiculous. I just come up with an idea and I'm like, well, I should build that. So yeah, those are the best places to go that will get you connected to whatever it is that interested you about what I'm on planet Earth to do.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining. It's been a pleasure. This
you.
has been Humanity Meets Business, Business Therapy with Christine Salvo, licensed marriage and family therapist, advanced certified mediator, and hypnotherapist. Thank you so much for listening and have a magical day. Good morning. This is Humanity Meets Business, Business Therapy with Christine Salvo.